Would you look at that? Spoiler season has already come and gone. Believe it or not, Bloomburrow spoilers have concluded. I found that out the other day and I was kind of taken aback. It feels like just yesterday we were talking about Modern Horizons 3 and what was going to happen with Nadu being such a good commander card. Well, in any case, the full set is out right now, and I kind of skimmed the set a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean I went through most of the cards. I tried to skip a little bit of the commons. So if there are any commons that you guys think are going to be really good for either Pioneer or Standard, I doubt there's anything for Modern. Let me know in the comments down below. Pioneer is a format that I know a decent amount about. I'm planning on playing the Regional Championship, which is Pioneer, in October, and figured that it would be worth it to see if there was anything that might shake up the Pioneer format a little bit. So starting us off at, I guess we'll call it number 10, is Seasoned Warren Guard. This is a 1 mana, 1/2 creature type rabbit warrior. Whenever it attacks while you control a token, gets +2/+0 until end of turn. For those of you who don't know, there's some different creature types and new kindred themes going on in this set. There's rabbits, warriors, lizards, warlocks, mice, otters, a whole bunch of different creature types that are being supported, and rabbit is one of them. Now, I don't think this is necessarily going to be going into a rabbit theme deck for Pioneer purposes at least, but more so just as a 1 mana 3/2. So there's a card from Kaladesh called Toolcraft Exemplar, which is a 1 mana 1/1, and then at the beginning of combat, if you have an artifact, it gets +2/+1, making it a 3/2. And this is a new version of that. With the introduction of Novice Inspector from MKM, we actually have 8 copies of Thraben Inspector. So now you can build this white aggressive artifact focused deck that's a bunch of inspectors, this plus Toolcraft Exemplar, Smuggler's Copter, All That Glitters, Michiko's Reign of Truth, and you can maybe do something a little bit like that. So yeah, I think that it's like the rule of 8 thing, where now that you have 8 1 mana 3/2s, I think that has the potential to be a deck. And one thing that I've noticed about this set as I was combing through it, it seems like they put a lot of power into cheap cards, and I really think that is a good idea, because the thing about the Pioneer metagame is the decks are all so fast and efficient, and it's really difficult for new cards to interact with those unless they're very cheap. And this happens to be that. Coming in at number 9, there is a bit of a food theme in this set, and one card that really caught my eye is Feed the Cycle. So 2 mana instant, as an additional cost to cast, you can forage or pay a black, and the active foraging is either exiling 3 cards from your graveyard, not specific types, just cards, or sacrifice a food. And the reward you get is 2 mana instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Now, there's a lot of food support in Pioneer currently. Gilded Goose, Wicked Wolf, Trail of Crumbs. There's Bristlebud Farmer, Feasting Troll King, maybe. But yeah, you get the idea. There's a decent amount of food support. Now, this isn't necessarily a payoff in terms of this is going to win you the game. It's not get to a spot where you've amassed X amount of food and use these food to kill your opponent. The payoff for this is you're getting an extremely efficient removal spell at instant speed, which is very, very important because Pioneer is a format that you have to act at instant speed, especially against something like Amalia. Again, this is not going to be your win condition, but it is a payoff for a food deck because it's a removal spell that not a lot of people get access to. 2 mana unconditional kill anything is extremely good, and I think that if there is a food deck, this will certainly be in that deck. Number 7, this is Sun Spine Lynx. So it is a 5/4 for 2 and 2 red. Players cannot gain life. Amalia, I'm looking at you. Damage can't be prevented. Not super relevant. And then when it enters the battlefield, or when it enters, rather, we're removing the battlefield. What if it's entering not the battlefield? When it enters, it deals damage to each player equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls. The issue with this card is it's not actually that good of Amalia hate, because Amalia is usually killing you or can goldfish you on turn 3, so if your anti-life gain card costs 4 mana, that can be a bit awkward. But where I really like this card is against the control decks. Azorius Control is probably the most popular one. There's some other ones, maybe some Esper, maybe some Jeskai. But those decks play a ton of non-basics. They have to play a lot of blue-white duels to be able to facilitate their double blue counter spells, double white wraths, and this thing at the top of your curve in some sort of red aggressive deck seems phenomenal against them. And you would probably board this card in against Amalia, because if you can answer their first couple of creatures, play this on turn 4, maybe they have a hard time answering it, it also kills them kind of quickly. So potentially a good card against Amalia, very good sideboard card against control, and a good card at the top of your red curve. Number 6, we have Mist Breath Elder. So again, as I said earlier, they've printed a lot of good 1-drops in this set, and that's something I'm very, very happy with, especially for Pioneer. This one is a 1-mana 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you return another creature you control to its owner's hand. That part's not a may. If you do, you put a counter on it. Otherwise, so if you don't have another creature, you may return it to its owner's hand. So TLDR, if you play it on turn 1, you don't have any other creatures, you just get a 2/2. And then later on in the game, as you progress your board and play more creatures, then those creatures have to be returned to your hand. That part's not a may. But each time you return a creature, you get a counter on it, it grows bigger. I haven't necessarily conceptualized a shell or a list for this, but green for a 2/2, there's maybe some warrior synergies that you can mix in a little bit, but just green 2/2, if you have some other ETBs, or say maybe you go like Llanowar Elf on turn 1, you play this in a 2-drop on turn 2, turn 3 you pick up the Elf because you don't really care, get a counter on this, hit for 6 because your 2-drop probably is a 3/3, so on and so forth. You can see where that curve out happens, even if you're not directly synergizing with Enter the Battlefield triggers, just having another cheap creature in some green aggressive deck. Again, obviously does work well with ETBs, not sure how many of those you would want to play, but something to keep in mind. Number 5. I don't know how to pronounce this card, so I'm going to say Yigra? Probably incorrect. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. Eater of All. So this is a 6/6 for 3, a black and a green. It has a ward cost of Sacrifice of Food. It says other creatures, not just yours, are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have 2 sack, gain 3 life. And whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, not just yours, put 2 counters on Yigra. So this plus Cauldron Familiar basically combos with a Swift Breeze. You don't really need much else besides this and a couple of Cauldron Familiars, because you can sack them to each other. Even if you only have one cat, you can sack something else if that has a dies trigger. You see where this is going. So it is 5 mana, which is a little awkward, but it does have a ward cost of Sacrifice of Food, which means that if they have a creature in play, the ward is basically sacrifice a creature. Or if you're playing against something like Blue-White Control, who doesn't play a lot of creatures, it's pretty hard to kill. So it's good in that matchup. And like I said, it's very, very easy to combo with this if you're playing some sort of food deck with Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven, Gilded Goose, etc., etc. So more food support. Cauldron Familiar is back in the menu. Number 5, Husk Burster. Husk Burster? What a weird word. Husk Burster Swarm. So it's 8 mana for a 6/6 Menace Death Touch, but it costs 1 less for each creature card you own in exile and your graveyard. So we've seen this a couple of times. I'm trying to think if the most recent one was from a standard set. It was like 1 mana 5/5 Death Touch. I don't remember the name, but there's like a bunch of different versions of something that costs 1 less for each creature in your graveyard. But this is the first one that counts exile. And typically these all-in dredge-based creature strategies have a very hard time beating graveyard hate. And this one sort of has the Crackling Drake upside of it even counts stuff in exile. So if you get leylined, you can still play a 1 mana 6/6, and that's pretty powerful. So if there is any sort of self-mill Insidious Roots creature deck, this one is very likely to be a 4 in that deck, and something that might be worth considering. All right, coming in at number 4, this one's a little boring, but it is a pretty significant upgrade to an already very good deck. This is Scrap Shooter. So 4/4 for 3. This is another new mechanic, which is gift a card. It says you may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell. If you do, when it enters, they draw a card. So there's various gifts. There's gift a 1/1 fish, there's gift treasures, there's gift cards. I think that might be the 3 that I've seen so far. Let me know if there's any other ones. But yeah, basically there's a downside where you're giving your opponent a resource, but you get a little bit of a benefit. You get a 4/4 reach, and when it enters, if the gift was promised, destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Now, why is that important, you ask? Well, there's a couple of things going on. This is the first green 3 mana creature that has 4 power that just kills an artifact or enchantment unconditionally, which is very, very important for the mono green deck because they're playing Outcast or Trailblazer and Kiora, both of which require your, not require, but pay you off for playing 4 power creatures. So there have been green creatures that disenchant in the past, but neither of those trigger the Outcast or Trailblazer or the Kiora, and this one does. So definitely something to keep in mind if you're interested in playing mono green, and a card that I expect to see quite a bit of play in those decks. Top 3 times. So coming in at number 3, this is Kitsa Otter Ball Elite. I really like the otters in this set. I think they did a very good job with the flavor and the artwork and just everything about them. So this is a 2 mana 1/3. It has Vigilance and Prowess. Pretty good keywords to have. You can tap to loot, draw a card, discard a card, and then you can pay 2 tap, copy an instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, activate only if its power is 3 or greater. So in Pioneer, we've seen attempts at various Izzet Prowess and, maybe sometimes Boros, but mostly Izzet Prowess strategies. They have a lot of cheap removal, red removal like Reckless Rage, Fiery Impulse, and Play with Fire, cheap cantrips, Opt, Consider, Sleight of Hand, and then a bunch of 1 mana prowess creatures, sometimes a couple of 2 mana ones, and then they top their curve with 4 treasure crews. You can probably imagine if you get Kitsa to 3 power, and granted, I think the one issue with Kitsa, and I'm always thinking about the high upside scenario of being able to copy treasure crews with this, which is what immediately came to mind. It is a little mana intensive, right? Because you need to be able to play 2 spells before the cruise, because if actually only 1 spell, right? Because you play 1 spell, it gets to 2 power, and then the cruise is the next spell. You can resolve the prowess trigger with the cruise still on the stack, gets to 3 power, then you can copy it. So you would effectively need 4 mana, right? 1 mana for a cantrip, 1 mana for the cruise, respond to the cruise, tap the Kitsa, copy it. So just something to keep in mind. There's some other blue-red prowess payoffs in this set. There's like a 1 mana 1/1 prowess class. There's a 2 mana 1/1 prowess haste that makes your spells cost less. So a lot of interesting things for prowess shells. And this one seems to be the one that is the most priced to move. So number 2, and it's kind of another boring one to be honest with you, but these are the cards that I expect to see the most play, or at least from a first glance, the cards that I think people will be trying with the most. And Dewdrop Cure, it goes into Amalia. It's really good in that deck, so let's see what it does. 3 mana for a sorcery, gift a card. Again, you can make your opponent draw a card. You can return 2 creatures with each with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If the gift was promised, instead return up to 3 target creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you make them draw a card, you get 3. If not, you get 2. Doomwake. There is a combo deck in Pioneer that utilizes 2 2-mana creatures. I wonder if this card is good in that deck. And the answer to your question is yes. Being able to get back Amalia and Wildgrowth Walker is very, very powerful. That's why they play Return to the Ranks. The reason I think this is better is because this not only can get a 3rd piece, because Walker plus Amalia is not technically good enough by itself. You need something else to start the chain. This can get that 3rd creature. For example, you Dewdrop Cure, let them draw a card, you get to get back Wildgrowth Walker, Amalia, and Cenote Scout. Cenote Scout triggers, starts the combo, they die. This seems much, much better, and what's also really nice about this compared to Return to the Ranks is it's much better post-Wrath. Return to the Ranks is powerful, but to get what Dewdrop Cure would do on an empty board, you need 5 mana because it's double white and X. So you had to pay 5 mana for Return as opposed to 3 for a Dewdrop Cure. I think it's a little bit better than Return. Obviously, there's some circumstances and some situations you can probably argue for the other one, but I like this card a lot, and I think it will see a ton of play in Amalia, which is not great for my sanity. And last but certainly not least, coming in at number 1, I think this card is fantastic and a huge boon to the aggressive red decks, which, to be fair, not sure if they need 2-drops, but this one might do the trick. This is Emberheart Challenger, which is 2 mana for a 2/2 haste with prowess, so already relatively good stats, and it has the new ability Valiant, which says whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. The reason I like this card so much is there's a number of cards in red, some that people already play. Monstrous Rage comes to mind, but there's some other good ones that you could potentially play. There is Titan Strength, there's things that give double strike, like Teamer Battle Rage, maybe. There's Adventure that gives double strike. I can't remember the name of it. But I kind of envision, now that you have Challenger and Slickshot show off, I'm almost wondering if there's a way that we can build some sort of red, maybe Gruul, maybe Boros, because Boros gives you Boros Charm for double strike. Some sort of prowess adjacent strategy that is more all in on just one-shotting them with double strike. It seems like there's maybe enough tools to do that. And Challenger and Slickshot are both incredibly good 2-drops, because the nice thing about Challenger, Ancestral Anger is another card that works very well with this. But the reason I like this card so much is when you target it with, say, a Monstrous Rage, you get to dig one card deeper to find the double strike spell, or maybe even just more Monstrous Rages to deal them more damage that turn. And this thing seems like it could get out of hand, especially with instants that you can play on your opponent's turn, because it triggers on their turn as well. So if you have something like Reckless Rage, say you Monstrous Rage on your turn, get the extra card there, and then on their turn you Reckless Rage to get another card on their turn. So a lot of cool stuff you can do with this, and I am pretty excited to try out some red decks with this one. All right, that's it for the top 10 from Bloomburrow for the Pioneer format. Let me know what you guys think about the video. What is your favorite card from the set, and what are you excited to get to battle with when Bloomburrow drops? As always, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate the subs. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you thought, and I will see you guys in the next one.